All right. Well, it looks like we're live, and I'm going to do another small discussion about the City of Brass campaign because it's been about 2 weeks since last time I discussed things with it. And last time I was experimenting with StreamYards, and we're in the post Google Hangouts ending, which I really didn't use that a whole lot. There were some issues that I used strictly from YouTube itself, but I've been playing with StreamYards a little bit, and I want to discuss kind of like starting your own campaign. The book I hold is actually for Swords and Wizardry. It's an old edition clone of Dungeons and Dragons, which most people are familiar with if you're on this channel. In fact, people that would be on this channel more than likely are here because of role playing games in general. This is a very fine book, and I recommend everybody who is a GM or loves their GM at their table to pick this up and put it immediately within their game and deliver it to their referee, their dungeon master, their games master, whatever it may be. With that being said, like like all streams, this is powered by Black Rifle Coffee. We are not sponsored by anybody in particular because sponsorships require you to be a puppet for someone else, and there's nothing wrong with that if you require funding for such. And everybody loves money, mind you, but it's always good to have the First Amendment, freedom of speech. And I know this will be reflected on BitChute later. God bless you people at BitChute. You guys are keeping my streams inflated far beyond what YouTube does because they squash my channel. 10 years, I'm at 160 some odd subscribers, mainly because I don't care. With that being said, Freedom Blend is an amazing blend of coffee. Now we'll get to the meat of this matter. This is the City of Brass book written by Casey Christopherson. He is a veteran of role-playing games and products. He worked for Necromancer Games. He had a box set in 2007 get released, which I own that box set, and it's an amazing box set. I love the artwork a little more than that because of the raw charcoal drawn nature. But this here is where you start your campaign. Chapter 3 is where we discussed last time, and I was saying how if I were to run a game, how I would basically want the players to not be from the town that had the problem. And I never like having the players be from the town that's having the problem. Even in Rise of the Rune Lords, I didn't really think that having players naked to the campaign world, the players are naked to it. Their characters are playing are familiar with the city, but it's hard sometimes to convey a sense of familiarity from the DM to the players. And in order to do that, you have to have a really masterful style of storytelling because you have to be able to embrace, especially if it's a small town, how all the characters know each other at the table and how everybody can recognize that you're playing a dwarf, that I've known you all my life and we like you, and you're playing an elf and I've known you all my life and we like you. When in actuality, this is a blue-haired person of color, or this might be a fat land whale that teaches at your local public school, or this is a softball player who drives a Subaru and has her nails trimmed and wears a ponytail. I mean, I'm just throwing these things out there, and that might be just absolutely wrong of me to do so, but you have a group of people at your table, and sometimes it's hard to visualize them as anything else than what they are. The purpose of a role-playing game isn't to explore socioeconomic political situations, but really just to enjoy yourselves and tell a story and throw dice at each other, or help the DM with dice if his monsters kill you all, which that's happened to me a couple times. What you're supposed to do is enjoy yourself at this table, and just for sake of continuity, for the ability to explain to people that are at the table how you all know each other, I always do put it to where you've worked with this person for a few weeks. which is why with first level adventurers, I might have a small session where they graduate from their academy training or their adventuring school or college or what have you. But then I'll fast forward a bit, and that newness should be worn off because I try to explain that to the players. Like, you've known these people for a bit. Any of you that have any quirks, you may want to explain that now, and I'll shut up. I'll be quiet. I want them to narrate how their characters are because I want them to kind of wrap themselves in this persona, at least while we're at the table. Now, this is an ideal situation. This is not a game where I have a person that's fallen asleep on the couch or he's looking at memes, or I have another person that's playing Breath of the Wild on their DS or whatever. I want players attentive. I want players to pay attention and enjoy themselves. So this is the ideal situation. Your friends are adventuring. They're caravan guards, I would say, out of Bard's Gate, because Bard's Gate has all these unions and has all of these hands that are involved with business, and the players are willing to take whatever gold can come their way. And therefore, that gold should come in the form of a reward for services rendered. First level adventurers, perfect job for that is you're a caravan guard, which explains why you're away from home, which is why you're relying on people that have nothing in common with you. I don't want to say you're in the military, because there are some people that'll be at a table and they'll have very strong anti-military views. Okay, you can feel like that. There's no law against that. But in this fantasy world, we need to have the trafficking of goods and services. And you people are the ones that typically would want to do it, because it's a way for you to get out on your own, earn some nice money, be away from family. That's always a good thing. Anyway, so the players should have adventured to this little place called Lorndain. Now, the village of Lorndain has a really nice layout. And you'll note that is not gridded. That does not have a hex map. Most Frog God Games hex maps are 50 miles a hex. And so there is a lot for you as a DM to paint in there. And if you wish to have the world be largely empty, filled with random encounters, you are free to do so. If you're like me and you've played other campaigns, and I'll even go as far as saying like Kinzer and Company's Kingdoms of Kalamar, which has the best fantasy game atlas I've ever seen for gaming, for any gaming system. They have a non-game rulebook called the Atlas of Kalamar. You probably want to look this up because it does so much for game design. It goes into crops, it goes into wind patterns, it goes into what areas you're going to expect to find the snow. It shows you where the wheat fields are at. It goes down to how many people are in these little burbs outside these huge cities. And the city construction on here, they don't even worry about that. They let you fill that in. But as a DM, when you look at these atlases, there is some amazing, amazing world building there. So after reading through that, when you look at something like Frog God Games, you're like, okay, well, there's Bard's Gate, and then outside of Bard's Gate, you have little burbs, little tent cities, little inns or settlements that would kind of get more and more sparse as you go further and further out. And that's kind of how I run my game. You don't have to do that. You can run it as you see fit. But Lorndain is quite a ways away. And when the players get there, they're expecting to have at least a nice warm bed, maybe a cold mug of ale, and they're wanting to have themselves some relaxation time. When they get to Lorndain, after the pleasantries and the offloading of the wagons are over, the players more than likely don't want to take right off again. In fact, you could even say to the players that if they would roll perception or a spot check would be necessary, they might see some missing posters or parchments up on various solid objects that are tacked on there. And you would say things like, well, you can see that there's a bunch of missing parchments. People seem to be popping up missing in this town. And it's not a big town. This is a village, almost a hamlet. The fact that it's got a religious facility there makes it not a hamlet, not a homlet, excuse me. So you have this little town, and the town itself is maybe about 12 or 15 buildings. As a DM, I would inflate that because I would put more houses in. And it goes into the various descriptions of all of the points of interest in this town. There's a real nice village rumors table. Results for 1 and 2 are gone, and they give you a legend that if you throw for every 5 gold, you get a +1 to your die roll. And the lower the result of your D20 roll, which is basically your diplomacy check for those of you that play Pathfinder 3.5.3.0. 3x. The lower the result, the worse the responses are. I would assume 1 and 2 would be just angry looks or maybe lots of profanity. If you are doing that, you're probably not in the business of talking and being the front man for the crew. Well, after a little bit of time, you're discussing things with people, you're probably eating. And a topic will come up. Who's missing in this town? I've seen some sheets, and they have a list on page 20 of the Swords and Wizardry version. They tell you of it's not quite 10 people, but they give you 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8. My bad. 14 people are missing in this little bitty hamlet. So a lot of the town is gone. And if you wish to portray it as such, you may, but the amount of buildings in the community that's listed versus how many people are missing, that might be like 2/3. I wouldn't go with that amount. I'd inflate the number of buildings in town. I'd make it like a small burb, kind of like what I grew up in. A town of 300 people had about 100 buildings, maybe 85 buildings in it, including houses and such. So I would want to kind of reflect that. Just keep that in mind, for every house or for every structure, there's going to be 3 people that operate in and out of it. And that usually works for campaign for a fantasy building. But what you'll do is you have this and you interpret to the players about these missing kids. And this Lorndane section is a great framework for how you would lay out your campaign. And it's very important that at the start of a campaign, you don't really want to throw a lot of options on your players because more than likely you have some new people that are at the table. They've never played before. And the less resources you give your game to start off, the less they're likely to try to fudge things or try to just hand wave stuff. And they'll actually try to get their hands dirty and be involved. So you let the players know about the individuals that are missing in town. And once that starts up, I would even go as far as that turns into your lunchtime that you were having as you unloaded your gear and you unloaded the goods. The lunch you were having afterwards, by the time you're finally done talking to all of the people in town, it's after 4 p.m. or it's after 1600, because I usually use military time in my campaign world just because in my world, I think they wouldn't use the convention of it goes to 12 and then resets at 1. I would do the 24-hour clock. But you give the players enough to where they would discuss things, and don't refer to your players by the player's name. Refer to them by their character name, because what you're trying to do is build immersion. You're trying to build immersion in a campaign world, and this is trying to be a role-playing game. So you don't really want to make the players remember we've got to wrap this up within an hour, or oh, your babysitter's at the house, at your house, just on your internet Wi-Fi, and doing nothing but milking the clock. You want to try to pull the players out of their current skin and let them enjoy being in a fantasy world. And so by calling them by their character name, by their narrative name, you're going to help bolster that fiction. And continue doing that, and then let them walk amongst some of the townspeople as they're on their way back from their dining hall back to their small camp, or if they're staying at the inn, describe to them how the boards are in not the greatest shape, and maybe the dwarf or maybe your heavy human makes the boards creak. Now, I would not suggest if you're the dungeon master to look at your heavy members at the table whenever you say that, because you're not trying to make a fat shaming statement. What you're trying to do is deliver the narrative that this building has seen better days, and this community that you're in is far from their glory times. If you can do that, if you can impart that and give this to them with a nice little bow on top to where maybe these players can be the answer that they're looking for, you're doing your job right as a dungeon master. Now, there's a couple things about this town and inhabitants. There's a hermit-like blacksmith by the name of Filthy Pete. And a lot of the people in this community are going to point fingers at him. And if your players have a wagon master that's been around longer than them, he could say, last season when I was here, he didn't make himself available to receive his shipment until the next day because he had been kind of ran out of town. The townsfolk don't like this guy. He lives here. They don't like him very much at all. And they accuse him of anything. I mean, if there's a goat missing, he stole it. If there's a chicken that's found butchered, he ate part of it raw. If you want to paint this guy like no matter what, he might have built 50 barns across the country, but he was found fucking a goat. And for that, this man must pay the price. And let the players know that at the table, no matter what happened, Filthy Pete's the cause of all evil. And give them that. Now, you don't want to deliver it to where he is the
villain, and I have my cowl has an upturned collar, and there's evil in my heart, and I seek to ruin everybody. And with my power of blacksmithing, I shall animate everybody into ancient undead.
No, don't do that. I don't recommend that. I don't recommend that at all. Now, your players should be pointed in that direction. They should be not forced, but there should be a few breadcrumbs as a DM or storyteller or narrative maker that you should sprinkle out, that you want to tell them that the players haven't seen Filthy Pete in town for over a week and a half since the last disappearance. And everybody now is outright talking about how Filthy Pete is probably the one that's stealing all these people. And there's children, and there's some infirm adults, and there's other people that are missing, and it's all his fault. The town is, much as they're angry, they're impotent, and they don't have the capacity to go and follow him. Now, some of the kids of the town, they're still there and not captured or missing yet. They should probably tell the players that there's a cabin in the woods, and we know where it's at. We don't go there very often because we're scared, but we can lead you about halfway there if you don't mind. But we're going to turn around right back. As soon as you turn your back on us, we're coming back to town because we don't want to go deal with Filthy Pete. There's enough evidence to cast doubt. No matter what Pete says, there's enough evidence to where the players might, should they find him, think he's guilty. But Pete's not the one that's doing all this. There's a group of people called the Cult of the Burned One, and astute players, investigative types, they might find a scrap or two of information and then don't go any further into it. That's just like the one thing you find in this community, the one clue as to who's really behind all these disappearances. But they found a perfect scapegoat in Patsy and Filthy Pete. And Pete knows more than a bit of the truth. And he knows he's being hunted. Unfortunately for Pete, his years of drinking and his avoidance of his neighbors and his experiences underneath the cemetery, he's also a war veteran. They've all combined to make this guy a train wreck on two legs. And the only thing he's concerned with is self-preservation. But for the first part of this adventure, his whereabouts should be the driving force for about half of it. There's a few places that you can insert him. They give you the information of where he might be. They also detail his shack down by the river. A van down by the river. No, they detail his shack a little bit. It's not very well maintained. Surprise, surprise. And the first thing he'll probably do whenever the players encounter him is he's going to fight. He's thinking that he's done for. They've hired mercenaries. These professionals are from out of town. They're going to kill me. Have him grab his axe and charge the players. Have him do it. If the players kill him off, they kill him off. And you've just made the rabbit hole a little wider. Or if the players are smart and they actually can capture him, let them do that. Now, Dead Folk Tell No Tales. That's for if your players actually kill him. But if you're playing a game where Pete actually is preserved and he's not slaughtered by the players, if your players are prone to thinking and not doing immediately everything the NPCs tell them, then congratulations to them. But what Pete should be doing is trying to save his ass. And as soon as he gets consciousness back, he should be trying to make an effort to contact the players and let them know, listen, well, no matter what they said, I didn't do it. I mean, you can play that up as much as you want. And he'll tell you, like, if it's mentioned, there's a bunch of missing people, where the fuck did you put them? He's going to come right back and be like, I didn't steal them, I promise you. And, excuse me, if astute players are playing, there's a letter in his cabin and a child's shoe found in his wagon. And those should be evidences pointing to the contrary. We know what's going on with you. That letter could implicate quite a bit. That shoe is going to cause problems. I'm just going to say that. If your players are searching a wagon of his, they're going to find a child's shoe that was planted there. Just do your best as a GM just to make it seem like Pete's fucked. And that's okay, because Pete should be fucked. Pete should be begging for his life, for his skin. And he should be trying his best to not end up dead from this. As a GM, it is your responsibility to continue a narrative. And no matter what you want to do is try to make it seem like Pete is at fault. So you're going to have to be tested. And no matter what you might have read from this book, you really want to convey the fact that there's a lot of doubt. Stinky Pete probably did all this. Now, after Pete successfully bargains for his life. The players are made aware of that Pete was assaulted by some scaly creatures that had sharp claws and teeth. And this is underneath the cemetery of Old Rest. And long ago, Stinky Pete was hired to steal a ring from a corpse. And while he was there, he gets attacked. So if the players go off in search of this information to see if he's telling the truth, make him fight for it, make him earn it, but then give them that reward of that information. Yeah, you find a bunch of tracks that do not match people tracks. They don't match halfling tracks. It's not gnomish. Let them have that. But you want, for the longest part of the first half of this part, this piece needs to implicate Pete as a guilty party. So as a DM, you kind of want to start setting that up. Not immediately. Establish the need for the players to go out and find Pete. And then just listen. Listen to your players talk. And interject a little bit. Like I said before, use funny voices. Do accents. Vary it up a bit. And try to make your world come alive, because it's going to benefit you as a GM to make it all more convincing and a better narrative later on. Anyway, we'll detail the last portion of that chapter 3 in our next video that I do on the review for the City of Brass. And I'm really enjoying going through this step by step because this is a great campaign book. And in all honesty, every GM that you know and play with deserves a chance to read this. So if they have a birthday or a holiday coming up that they particularly like, you should be a good person. I'll put the link to this book in the commentary section, and hopefully you guys will go and visit that. I receive no money from Frog God Games. I get nothing but thanks because I ran their products for so many years. But I've got to tell you that I've ran their products for so many years because their marks of quality are all over from cover to cover inside their products. And there might have been some that you've picked up that you didn't like. Not every adventure is going to be perfectly tailored for you. But at the same time, they do a great job of making a module to where you're forced to think, you're forced to act, you're forced to be tactical. And in a game called Dungeons and Dragons, those 3 rules right there, along with the flower dressing of a good realized campaign world, that's always a certain buy for me. So I hope that this is a buy for you. Chapter 3 will continue. Thank you so much.